Thank you, Chair, and welcome everyone. I wanted to comment on a few things, some of which Regents asked for updates on, and a couple of great things that have happened around the university. And I will be combining the President's report and the Chancellor's report. The Chancellor's part of the Chancellor's report. First, I want to share some data on our STAR registration system. I think most of you have seen STAR and you're aware of the awards that we have won. We have perhaps the most advanced graduation pathway system in the country right now. A major activity that has been underway for the last several years has been the full integration of STAR with our registration system, which is the Banner Student Information System. And most of you registered the way I did, which was like going to a cafeteria, and you picked up the computer cards and you got your classes, and hopefully it added up to a schedule that was going to get you out in a timely manner. What we are moving to is using the program pathways that have been developed by our faculty across the system. Students, once they identify themselves in the program, they get essentially a template schedule that keeps them on track to graduate in a timely manner. 2 years for an associate degree, 4 years for a bachelor's degree. And they then have the option of juggling within that, changing individual classes. They can change within the program without any delay. And if they select something that would take them off path, they are warned, but they can still go ahead. So if they want to pursue their interests, change time, change day, change instructor, change an elective, that one works just fine. So we've been working on this now for about 2 years, starting with 10, and I see Chancellor LaCroix is here. We started with 10 students in one program at Honolulu Community College to begin to check it out. For this semester, we've had 22,000 students from all campuses using it, and this April we're going to go live with all students at all campuses. What I wanted to mention is that the data across higher ed nationally is that about 22 to 25% of the courses that students take are not part of what they need to do to graduate on time. This approach and our data so far for this semester is we have that number down to 4%. So that's part of our persistent effort to really help students graduate on time. We can't force them to do so, but we can sure help them. The other side of this that's really interesting is that this tells us when students are requesting classes to graduate that are not available. And the STAR team at UH Mānoa has developed a dashboard that can help deans, vice chancellors, and others understand in real time what classes students are requesting and what programs they are actually needed for, so that those can be added during the registration period. So it's really quite remarkable. I think we just continue to stay at the forefront of this. And I'll say this work is never done, but there are always ways that we can keep improving. And it takes the work of everyone. The faculty have been heroic in developing the pathways, the staff who have entered those into the system so that they can turn into computer rules, and then the technology teams, both STAR and Banner, working together to make this real for our students. I want to mention a research highlight. Earlier this month, NOAA announced the Heeia National Estuarine Research Reserve, or NER as we affectionately call it. This is the 29th of these in the country. It's the first one in the last 6 years. We just made it in the last days of the previous administration. But these protect a section of estuary and provide a living laboratory to explore and understand important areas. So it's research, it's education, it's community outreach, and this one we're particularly proud of. It's 1,385 acres, and the lead manager for this is UH Mānoa Hawaii Institute for Marine Biology. It's in partnership with the state, and this qualifies us for federal funding from the Coastal Zone Management Program of the federal government. In terms of improving our effectiveness as an institution, we awarded our first design build contract. I think many of you saw that. We had done design build in the 90s for the Stan Sheriff Center and the Molokai Ed Center, interestingly when it was a design build, but those were done with DAGs. So this is something we committed to doing to improve our construction processes. We expect this to be a model. Our next one is pending, but this is what we plan to use for all new construction across the UH system. We have also implemented a new e-builder, which is the name of the software program to help us manage capital improvements. And I think when you see the quarterly capital improvement updates from Vice President Gouveia, you have noticed that our new projects are achieving much greater success in terms of time and budget milestones. And that's not a coincidence. We're still cleaning up a number of the old ones, but we are doing much better, and we expect you to be holding us accountable each quarter. Breaking news, this morning I signed the next step of our real estate development project at UH West Oahu. So you will recall we had a complex process we had laid out to solicit a master developer to help us develop 150 acres of commercially zoned land that's developable adjacent to the campus and along the highway and between two rail stops. This has been a struggle for us. It was a lot of work to understand what we actually had as asset and what the developers expect to see to be able to work with us. But we have identified the Hunt Stanford Car Development Team as our developer. So the good news is we have identified who we want to work with, but this is the start of the negotiation. So no deal has been struck. This is, per the timeline that we laid out, this is the identification of the entity with whom we will go into exclusive negotiations. As we move forward and before any deal is finalized, that will be brought back to the full board for approval in accord with all of our applicable policies. But I want to thank both the regents and senior administrators who have been involved in getting us this far. As with many of these new ventures, we have learned a lot along the way that will help us with our other activities. Let me mention the integrated academic and facilities plan. I'll just be brief, we have a busy agenda, but we're still working very hard to understand what that plan will look like that will address the concerns of the regions and actually help the administration move forward as we are developing more specific academic and facilities plans. The team will be meeting tomorrow. That's a mix of regents and administrators, and that should be right for a more complete update next month. I wanted to conclude my part of the report with a progress report on something. When you have approved the tuition schedule that takes place starting next academic year for the next 3 years in total, the board provided some mandates to the administration as to what the board wanted to see happen, in particular regarding stewardship of resources and management at UH Mānoa. So I'll just tick off, the requirement was to give you a substantial progress report by the end of the year, which we intend to do. But in the spirit of not waiting till the last minute and then finding out you may have concerns, I wanted to give you kind of a midterm update. So the first one was about the alternative financing of repairs, such as an ESCO. Community colleges did this, and I think it took 2 or 3 years to get through assorted processes. We were ready to issue an RFP using an ESCO approach. As we got farther into it, it became apparent that there were significant questions at UH Mānoa, including about the state of our energy grid, the campus energy grid, which the campus completely owns and operates. That raised a series of questions around operation and maintenance, and basically resulted in unknown financial risk to the project. So now we're looking at a much more comprehensive public-private partnership approach. That will change the scope, but it will include financing, design, build, and an element of operations and maintenance as well. This puts all the risk into one bucket. It will incorporate elements, but we'll end up with one pro forma so that we'll be able to evaluate. We think this is going to take us through this academic year to get that out. So We should have progress at the end of the academic year, but we're not where we hope to be on this one. I have a more positive story. I think the second item the Regents asked for an update on and significant progress was around enrollment management. This has been an extremely high priority for the leadership team at UH Mānoa. Vice President Dixon has a system-wide group also that's looking at strategies across the system, but much of this plays out on each of our campuses in terms of recruiting and retaining students. We obviously need to get more students in. That's our job, to educate more students, and the community needs us to do that. But it also has pretty significant financial implications for UH Mānoa and all of our campuses. And the enrollment decline has had pretty significant negative financial impacts on the campus, and it continues to be a challenge. That said, we're looking at this across a number of elements. My experience in the, 4 to 5 months I've been in this role is that our efforts have been pretty fragmented, and everybody is working hard on their piece of it, but we haven't pulled together as well as we should have. And each entity that's improving in its area doesn't necessarily result in a net enrollment gain and a net output gain. I will note, however, that the continuing increase in our graduation rates does continue to stress enrollment. It's wonderful for the students, it's wonderful for their families, but we aren't replacing freshmen as fast as we're graduating, even though our freshman class size continues to increase. So this year, for example, we actually had over a 5% increase in new student enrollment, but we have a net decline in our student population. So that gives you a sense of how these things play out together. Our recruitment team has brought in more local freshmen. You may have seen the news release on that. We had a 30% increase in new Native Hawaiian students, 9% increase in Filipino students, 3.6 increase in new first-time freshmen. So all of that is good news. They've implemented a CRM, customer resource management program, so they can actually track prospects. That's one of the modern practices, schedule visits online, a lot of those things. Our retention team has done some amazing work on analytics, as good as anywhere in the country, to understand what are the factors that help us understand the students who don't return from freshman to sophomore year. That number right now is in the range of 25% of our freshmen are not present for their sophomore year. That is low relative to peers, and it really hurts us. And you can see the pressure on the recruiters is, bring us more students, and the recruiters say, can you keep the ones that we actually recruit? And then we're graduating more out the other end at the same time. So it's a series of pressures. And I will also say, and I will acknowledge Dean Denise Conan, who surveyed her incoming students in social sciences and asked them what they wanted to study. Their first choice was sustainability. We don't have a sustainability program other than through interdisciplinary studies. We have some related programs in SOAS. Their second choice was criminology, which we also don't have. So part of this is also on the academic side of the house to offer programs that will attract students to come in as well and give recruitment people, retention people, advisors more tools to work with. So the work that we're doing on analytics is both long-term, but I will say I'm a little bit relentless with people that we need to both think about what we're doing for the long term, but in a very real sense, we need more students coming in fall 2017, and we need more of this year's freshmen returning to us in fall 2017. So that is a hard focus for both of our teams, even as we move forward. I will also note that it's pretty clear to me, at least, that we need to restructure our efforts so that enrollment management becomes a major focus that is inclusive, not just of recruitment, but recruitment, retention, advising, financial aid, which is highly distributed across the campuses, departments who have their scholarships. So this has to be tied together in a very strategic manner. and frankly, other universities that are very successful have done this already. The third item in the Manoa, I call them the Manoa mandates from the board, is a master plan for the campus. We have a couple of things going on in that regard. One is we're just kicking off now a space study. So we are often asked the question, do we have enough space? Do we have too much space? Could we reduce the footprint? The number I heard yesterday was, could we reduce the footprint 20%? And the answer is, right now, we don't know how our space utilization compares to our peers. You saw the Academic and Student Affairs Committee saw a study of classroom space, but not the overall campus space. So we're bringing in a third party who will be starting next week to survey every space on the Manoa campus so that we can understand how it is being used and by whom. That has never been known before, believe it or not. So that will give us a sense of what we have and how it's being used. At the same time, we have repurposed a planning contract that was inherited to develop what I'll call a high-level facility strategy for the campus. So it's not the full integrated academic and facilities plan, and it's not the detail of an LRDP, which addresses some of our city permitting requirements, but it's something that at the end of the day we think will lay out what we expect this campus to look like over the long term. So that will be very inclusive as it develops with our faculty, with our students, with the community, and with our stakeholders. And so it will be a more thoughtful, I think, and strategic look at the future development of the campus, including identifying the opportunities for revenue development, which are going to be critical as we move forward, and that's part of our strategic direction. And you may have seen something about that in the sports pages this morning. We had a student group from architecture, actually 3 student groups from architecture, looking at different ways we might redevelop the lower campus. And we want a thoughtful and professional view of that for the entire campus. The fourth of the Manoa mandates is about restructuring. I've had a couple of mini retreats with the administrative and faculty leadership of the campus, looking at rationale for changes, talking about some specific changes and opportunities. And I think we're about ready to go broadly public on the campus next month to really lay out a grassroots information gathering of ideas. Certainly there are many people who have specific ideas, but we haven't really invited comments from everyone who may have great ideas. We are looking at academic restructuring, and that's what the mandate was specifically about, to enable the campus to move forward as a modern research university focused on the holistic 21st century needs of the state of Hawaii. That's the charge that you issued to us. We're trying to take that a little bit more specifically, talking about Manoa's focus as Hawaii's research university. We do have a comprehensive now on the other side of the island, UH West Oahu. But we're looking at how will we offer programs and degrees that are relevant and compelling, including to professionals in the community. We think that's an important service and revenue opportunity for the campus. We need to address current and emerging workforce needs of the state and strengthen the economy. We need to be looking at our campus competitiveness for major research awards. That will be a challenge over the next years at the federal level. We want to advance interdisciplinarity. That's important both for research and for students. And we want to focus on our areas of excellence and relevance. And that, unfortunately, will mean leaving some things behind. Manoa simply can't keep doing everything that it has been trying to do with the resources available to us. At the same time, I think the academic folks have made it clear that administration needs to also be looked at. So we are looking at opportunities around both the Chancellor's Office and the Vice Chancellor's offices. Clearly, recruitment and retention, building this enrollment management will be one piece of that. We're also looking at shared service centers. This will be based on a comprehensive data set that we haven't had since 2009. It really looks at what's going on in our colleges and in our down to the department level in terms of students, faculty, majors, graduates, so that we can really see the scope of activity in all of our units. It isn't that everybody gets measured by one standard. Some forms of education are more expensive, some faculty types are more expensive, some classes need to be smaller, but we need to be informed by data and we make hard decisions as well. Finally, you asked for a new approach to budgeting and resource planning across dollars, positions, and space that looks at overall campus priorities and recognizes the changing reality of financing public higher education in Hawaii and the nation. I would say we are pretty well tapped out for major new growth, either by increasing tuition rates or substantial investments from the state of Hawaii. We will continue to seek help, but those will not be major revenue sources for us moving forward. This academic year, we implemented centralized position control. That was actually more welcome than you might have expected. But basically, when a position becomes vacant in any of the academic units, it's pulled back to the chancellor's office, and deans then request positions from this vacancy pool, and those approvals are given based on resources, needs, and campus priorities, frankly. And I think people have been looking for a little bit of leadership and strategy on these matters. A second, and I mentioned the new data that we have, this was absolutely necessary to begin the stress testing, and you've seen the budget models that were presented by Interim Chancellor Enrollment over the past 2 years. We really need to see what those will play out if we were to implement them. So we're now entering stress testing period. That will start next week to understand with real data how would this model or another model play out, and that will help us understand if the models make sense, if the parameters make sense, and move forward. Our goal is to have something new in place to guide the allocations for the next fiscal year. And finally, space. I think there's a very wide recognition now that probably wasn't as apparent 5 years ago that space is money, and it is particularly money in an era in which we have a pretty burdensome deferred maintenance backlog and requirement for modernization. We are trying to move, and we're starting with the life science building and understanding that space needs to not just be owned by a department for all perpetuity, but it needs to be the institution space to be allocated based on needs and priorities. The space study will be a huge first step, and we are looking at space policies of other universities. The good news about many of these areas is we are not a first adopter. So there's a lot of opportunity to learn from the experiences of other universities, and we don't have to invent our way forward. And I'd say personally, that's a great strategy. In an area like GPS, we can be a national leader, and in other areas where there are people who have been successful, we can learn from them.